Hey Flower Tribe, it's Kelly Lehman from Cranberry Fields Flower Farm and Lucy Lehman. Hey Flower Tribe, it's Kelly Lehman from Cranberry Fields Flower Farm, and I'm coming to you from behind the camera today. And today I wanted to answer a question that some of our Flower Tribe members have asked, and that is, what is the best sun exposure to plant my smooth hydrangeas in? So I just wanted to show you what mine look like and the different sun exposures that they have. So this is a whole row of Annabelle hydrangea. It is like the second week in June. This is what they look like. This is what that same Annabelle hydrangea row looks like at the end of June. And I have these planted in morning sun, so they get at least 6 to 8 hours of morning sun. And then they have some afternoon shade. And the afternoon shade prevents those white blooms from getting burnt up in the afternoon. So you'll notice that they're nice and white and puffy. If they were to get full sun, there was a good chance that I would have a lot of browning on these white blooms because they would have just gotten too crispy from too much sun exposure. And the opposite happened to these Annabelles at the end. These used to be planted in, like that full morning sun, just like the rest of the row. But what happened was there's a tree that's next to it that became very overgrown, and now the branches cover those Annabelles and it blocks the morning sun, which is why they don't look very good and they're not giving me flowers. So I'm going to have to move these plants because they're just in too much shade right now. And they used to be beautiful. They used to be in full bloom just like the other ones. And I'll show you what that looks like now. I'll do like a little slide in. But over the course of the past 7 years, now it's just got much too much shade back here, and I'm going to have to dig them up in fall and move them someplace else because they're not as happy as their sister plants that are planted with that morning sun and the afternoon shade. So that's the story with what happened with this hedge here. But they do make a really beautiful like landscaping border. I think they're just like a really happy, fuss-free hydrangea. A lot of times the rain and the wind will knock some of these heavy blooms to the ground, like what happened over here. And the simplest way to fix that is to just lift the bloom, like with your hand, just pick them up. And I basically just kind of support them with some of the other blooms that are, standing up, that are a little bit sturdier. I'll kind of mix them in here, do a little crisscross with my fingers, and that usually fixes them. I know that sometimes it's not enough. So sometimes I'll actually come out here, I'll put a few bamboo poles, like 1, 2, 3, and then I'll wind up doing a little, like some of that gardener's green tape around it, and that will just hold up some of those stems that seem to droop. And so that's like another just quick fix for those drooping flower heads. Most years, I will not prune back this hydrangea because I like the idea of having some of that old wood act as a support system for some of these heavy blooms. But some years, I do prune it back to give it a little bit of a recharge. And that was what I did this year. So here's what happened. I came in here in early spring and cut the old wood back to about 18 inches, maybe 18 inches, 24 inches. And that just kind of gave the plant more of like an energy boost so that it can, kind of like concentrate on giving me a lot of, fresh, beautiful blooms. But what happened is when I cut back some of that old wood network, it doesn't provide for a structure to hold up these heavy blooms. So most years I don't prune them back. And all those, like see these things that are cut back here, all of these, like wooden sticks in here are about this tall right now, and they wind up supporting all of these heavy blooms. And so most of the time I will not prune them back because I like having the support of last year's stems to kind of hold them up. But some years when I don't have as many blooms, I'm realizing that I just kind of need like a little bit of a recharge. That's when I'll come in here, maybe like every 3 or 4 years, and I'll prune them back in spring. But for the most part, I leave them alone because I do like to have that extra, almost like, like a built-in wooden cage inside the plant to support those heavy blooms. As far as fertilizers go, a lot of times I don't even apply any fertilizer, but if I see the plant is not doing well, I will wind up giving it a little bit of rose tone in early spring. So I'll just kind of sprinkle some rose tone around each plant, and that seems to give it like a little nutrient boost. But when my hydrangeas are doing well, I leave them alone. I try not to over fertilize, and a lot of gardeners tend to over fertilize their hydrangeas, and what happens is they over fertilize them and then they don't get blooms because they wind up having beautiful green leaves and the plant is super lush. But sometimes the plant will not bloom if it's over fertilized, and you can also sometimes even like burn the plant by putting too much fertilizer on. And when you do it, make sure that you apply the fertilizer around the drip line. And that's pretty much, we just had a rain here, so that's pretty much where like the water falls off the plant, which is usually like, around like where my finger is here. So that's where you would kind of sprinkle that fertilizer. You never want to sprinkle it bumped up like right against the stems, at the root, because then you can kind of burn the plant. So always apply the fertilizer at the drip line, where like the water would come off the leaf of a plant. And that's usually a good gardener's rule of thumb. Hey, Shadow. And this is what my endless summer look like right now. And the same thing, my endless summer, my mop head hydrangeas also enjoy that morning sun and the afternoon shade. These do not have blooms on them right now because they experienced a harsh winter zap that kind of got them towards the end of like spring. And so like we had like winter temps come in the end of spring when I had little blooms on them. So that's why I don't have any blue, endless summer blooms on them, but I'm going to get a second flush of flowers coming from them towards the end of summer. But I'll slide in a picture right now to show you what a lot of the endless summers should look like at this time of year. A lot of these right now are, however, planted in full sun in the front of my house. And so I wanted, the look of like endless summers in the front of my house. I knew that it wasn't the ideal place to, actually plant them because they do enjoy that afternoon shade. And I know that some of these blooms are going to experience some of that, burnt up look, towards the end of August when temperatures are real hot. But for the most part, I wanted to try them out. And so, they've been doing really well. The blooms will not last as long as they would have or been quite as beautiful if they were planted with that morning sun and the afternoon shade. But sometimes you just have to experiment and kind of, see what works in your own gardens. And I'm okay with these plants being in the full sun, even though ideally they would have enjoyed that afternoon shade. Thank you so much for joining me in this video, and please say hi to us over on my Cranberry Fields Instagram page and also on my Kelly Lehman's Flower Tribe Facebook group, because there's thousands of gardeners from all over the world and they're asking and answering loads of garden questions over there. And please also check out my brand new garden podcast, and I have about 50 hydrangea care videos that I will link to the end of this video in my hydrangea care playlist. And please also let me know where you're viewing this from in this great, big, beautiful world. I love to see how our flower tribe is growing around the globe each week. And you can also check out my online flower courses. All of these will be in descriptions below, and I will see you in the next video.